Hey everybody. I have read your practicum logs and your time logs that are in Typhon and provided feedback for you. Note that the majority of your feedback is going to be in Typhon. So make sure that you go in there and you read the feedback that's been provided. I know that that this course is different than 617, so you may have to tweak your approach to your practicum logs just a little bit. The important thing to remember is the reason that you are doing your practicum logs. The reason that you're doing these practicum logs is twofold. First, you want to demonstrate that your activities in your preceptorship are directly addressing your goals and objectives. That's what's going to happen in your supportive narrative section. This is the story you're telling to say, these are the goals and objectives I said I was working on, and my supportive narrative section explains how I worked on them. And it includes your insights, your thoughts, your self-reflections in that section. The second reason that you are doing your practicum logs is to address how your goals and objectives, your practicum time, all relate to the NLN core competencies for nurse educators. If you have organized your goals and objectives well with the NLN scope and standards, it's going to be pretty easy to be able to connect all the dots in the application section. So I want you to always remember that this is a purposeful activity. This is the documentation of your learning in the practicum setting. It really is one of the most important components of your master's education. This is where the rubber hits the road, and this is where you tell us how it's hitting the road. So be thoughtful about this approach. Be diligent in providing enough details so that a reader can read your log and be able to say, okay, all the pieces are connected. If you struggled in this first log, that's okay. Read the feedback and synthesize that and then make changes for log 2. By the time you end 618, I want you on solid footing, so 619 and 620 are a breeze for you. So really work on providing enough detail, organizing your logs, and being thoughtful in how you approach those so that you're successful. Want to make sure that before you start log 2 that you go back into your time log. Make sure that first that you put the hours in that you use for your goals and objective time, and second that you put them in correctly. They should be in your goals and objective column, but they should also be in your shift time column under your duration. That shift time column is going to be the roll-up of all the hours that you have spent in practicum. So if you've only put it in your goals and objective column, you'll be missing them in your roll-up column. So make sure that you've made those corrections, and I've addressed that if I found that as an error. So just make sure that that's corrected before you start your time log for number 2. Okay, I think that's... one more thing about your preceptorships or your practicum time. I want to remind you that your practicum time is to be one-on-one with your preceptor. You should not be taking time away from your preceptor, either being instead of being with your preceptor, maybe your preceptor has suggested that you go into the classroom of someone else for a day or two. That's not okay. Your approved preceptor, the reason that we have the approval process is to make sure that the person that's precepting you is highly qualified. We don't know when time is spent by a student with other people in an organization. We have no way to vet who those people are and to ensure that the practices or skills that they're monitoring or evaluating or shadowing are going to be at a graduate level. So know that your time with your preceptor should be one-on-one. If there needs to be a variation to that, you need to contact me or your faculty instructor for 619 and 620 and have that conversation with them. Please do not make the mistake of spending time outside your preceptorship and learning that that time cannot be counted. So just be very careful about that. Okay, your discussion boards. It's one of the discussion boards that I really like to read. I try to pick topics for the discussion boards that I am actually interested in. That way when I have to read it, 15, 20 times, it's still interesting. You guys found some great articles. I was so interested to see how many of you talked about cell phone use in the classroom. Several of you talked about tardiness in the classroom. What was the other one? Bullying. That was another one that I saw a few times. It was reply to one of your comments about tardiness and how it needs to be role modeled. And I have a real clear policy in an undergraduate course I teach that you have to be on time, and that's a demonstration of respect for someone's time. And I have a really nice little blurb in my expanded syllabus about it. And I'm normally on time for most things. Class, I'm always on time. Well, about 2-3 weeks ago, I was 10 minutes late for my class. I was mortified. Here I had spent 10 weeks banging on my drum of you've got to be on time, you need to be prepared, and I come scrambling in late. Needless to say, I had to make a few mea culpas, explain that there had been a traffic delay that I was completely unprepared for. They closed the street. So while we do want to have policies and we do want to set those expectations, we also need to afford some grace, and that we're really looking for patterns of behavior that become alarming. One-off types of things. As Christian nurse educators, we should be sensitive to the fact that life happens. I was very grateful. My students all stayed in their seats. I was a little surprised because I was pushing the limit. I thought for sure I'd come in and somebody would have said, we're out of here. They were all just patiently waiting. They all also noticed that I had never been late before, so I think they were a little surprised that I came rolling in and was so flustered. Two of you did a really nice job doing a integration of the Christian worldview in this perspective. Emily wrote that there are many ways that student incivility and misconduct can enter the academic setting within a nursing school. Nurse educators should be vigilant in creating proactive strategies in handling student incivility and misconduct. If the inappropriate student behaviors are ignored, it may eventually lead to a bigger issue. As Christian nurse educators, it's imperative to realize that students will sin, but it is our responsibility to confront the issue in love and forgive the student's behavior. Colossians 3, verse 13 commands us to forgive those who have complaints against, who we have complaints against, because the Lord has forgiven us. What an incredible perspective to remember in the often frustrating moments of student incivility and misconduct. I love that Emily remembers that we have to confront the behavior and then we forgive it. So often as Christian educators, our heart says to afford grace and to forgive immediately, and we don't personalize some behaviors that are problematic. And I think that's a really good thing. But when we don't confront the behavior in addition to forgiving, the student's awareness is not heightened. They may have no idea that their behavior is disruptive or incivil. So we have to first confront it and then we forgive it. And I think it's really important that when we forgive it, that we say, I'm concerned about this pattern of behavior I'm seeing for you. I want you to know that I'm not upset with you. I'm not mad, but I'm concerned for you. And I want you to know what this behavior is communicating to me. That you can share your concern and be forgiving at the same time. Great example that Emily wrote. Sarah wrote, when one looks at life, you can tell I'm tired. When one looks at the life and ministry of Jesus Christ while he lived here on earth, one can see many methods and strategies that Christ implemented to deal with difficult people. He spoke harshly and quickly to put Peter in his place in Matthew 16:23. But then in John 21, Christ gently asked Simon Peter questions. Christ is seen wielding a whip in the temple of John chapter 2, verse 15, casting people out and overturning tables. But then we see him rebuke Martha in a stern but compassionate manner. As a Christ follower, I pray I will lean into his guiding and wisdom that I must deal with misconduct, incivility, and violations. All students are valued by God the Father. Only wisdom from God can help me implement the appropriate measures to correct students. Sarah does a beautiful job doing an integration of the Christian worldview and biblical framework. Love the instances in which we are called biblically to address behavior directly, and that we are in the same breath encouraged to be kind and to be compassionate. Fairly sure none of us could be flipping over tables in a classroom without being unemployed, no matter what the Bible says. But I think that what that gives us permission to is to be stern when we need to be stern. I regret that I cannot remember which one of you talked about a preceptor directly dealing with bullying and having to be really firm. I think that's a really good example of going in and turning over a few tables. Sometimes we have to ruffle feathers to get the attention. In our world that we live in with human resources and policies, we need to do that in a way that doesn't get us unemployed. So, wonderful, wonderful work. Talk really briefly about next week if you've got your first teaching plan due. A few of you have expressed concerns about how am I supposed to teach something in 15 to 20 minutes. Here's what I will tell you. If your typical practice, if you're in an academic setting, is to have a lecture for a couple of hours, know that your students are only going to listen to segments of about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you pick a segment of a course that you're going to teach and incorporate some kind of teaching strategies with it, 15 to 20 minutes is a good framework for you to be really detailed. If you're in a hospital setting and you're needing to teach your bedside nurses about a policy change, maybe a practice change in how they're going to complete an assessment, you're lucky if you have 15 minutes. So think about what could you accomplish in a huddle? What could you accomplish at morning report? We want to be able to deliver information in a concise but meaningful way and appropriate for our learners and the environment we're in. The idea for this is not for you to be able to expound on all the knowledge that you have from a nursing perspective. It's for you to craft a really well-developed, fine-tuned teaching plan. I want you to focus on the steps. The content's important because you've got to give me a pretty good outline of that. But the important part of this assignment is that you're thinking methodically about each and every step so that when you do plan a lesson plan, whether you're in a hospital setting or an academic setting, you've got that tool in your toolbox. You know the components of a really good teaching plan that will keep you on target and help you teach the content you intend to teach. Be thoughtful about that. Okay, I think that was it. Okay, remember, there's a worksheet involved that you are provided. It is a worksheet, folks. Please don't give me a paper. Good old-fashioned bullet points. I'd like to have like a subject and a verb and, a few other words, but please do not write this as a paper. The design is a worksheet. Think about it. If you're going to go teach something, you're not going to write a paper that outlines what you're going to teach. You're going to pull out a sheet of paper out of your notebook and you're going to write down some ideas, and you're going to do it in a way that you can reference it as you go through. You're not going to read a paper to guide your work. So make sure that you're using the worksheet that is provided. Know that you have questions or concerns. The Ask the Professor link is best unless it's specific to your own academic success. Otherwise, use the Ask the Professor link. A lot of questions that relate to this are common, so that's a pretty good place. Feel free to email me directly if you have other questions. I think that is it. I hope you guys have a great evening. I hope you have had a wonderful Easter. I was going to show you my yellow peeps that I got for Easter, that I bought myself for Easter, but they're all gone. I ate them. So I hope you had peeps. And if you didn't have peeps, I hope it's because you don't like them. Have a great week, folks. Touch base with any questions or concerns. I'm here. Take care.